Hey everybody, Matt here. Thanks for stopping by and welcome to Imagine Then Make. In this video, we're going to unbox and then test out this 10-inch drill press by WEN Products. So as you can see, everything's packaged in a plastic bag. This is a pretty heavy piece because it's cast. I don't see any damage. I don't see any issues with the paint. Looks pretty good. Here's the table. Got oil on it, so that's good. No rust or corrosion that I can see. Nice big bolt to adjust the table angle. And a scale that you can use when you adjust the table angle. So this looks good. I don't see any issues with this. And here's the post. It's got oil on it, so I don't see any rust. The rack's already installed. I would say this is a thicker, the tubing uses a thicker wall thickness than I've seen, well, just recently, if you watched my most recent review. The thickness of the wall here is a little bit larger. That's what I'm trying to say. So here's the head of the unit. Again in a plastic bag. Got a grounded plug. It's got a power switch key. Let's move these out of the way. Smooth opening lid. Okay, so you got a little bolt here with a little nut with kind of a rounded end, and it just goes over the little spring clip there. Okay, looks good. I don't see any damage of any kind. It's a little wobbly, but maybe not as bad as the last one. We'll see. Alright, let's take a look at the owner's manual and the safety instructions. Well, I just got finished reading the owner's manual and the safety instructions. Pretty standard stuff. I didn't find anything unusual in this document. If you follow my channel at all, you've heard me say, and I'll say it again, whenever you get a new tool, take a few minutes, go through the owner's manual, the safety instruction. It might just help you out. So before we go too much further, I wanted to give you a shot of the product label right on the drill press. You can see it's a model 4210T. It uses 120 volt AC power, draws 3.2 amps, and has a range of speeds from 600 to 3100 RPM. And you can see that the manufacturing date is April 2019. So now let's take a quick look at the chuck that came with this drill press. Right out of the box, it was in a plastic bag, and taking it out of the plastic bag, you can feel all kinds of oil on it. So I don't see any rust or corrosion. It opens and closes very smoothly, so that's great. Now the chuck key that it came with has this plunger that's got a spring. So that makes this chuck key self-extracting. Let me show you what I mean. In normal practice, you insert the chuck key and you tighten and loosen depending on what you're doing. And then as soon as you take your hand away from the chuck key, that spring pushes the plunger out and it pushes the chuck key out of the chuck, because you never ever want to leave a chuck key installed and then turn the drill press on. That would be a really bad day. So to help prevent that, this chuck key has a spring-loaded plunger, which makes this chuck key self-extracting. I think that's a really nice feature of this particular model. So here's the drill press all assembled. Absolutely no issues at all putting it together. It literally took me less than 30 minutes to put it all together. You get all the tools you need. The only thing I grabbed out of my toolbox is a 1/2-inch wrench to tighten the bolts that hold the column to the base. They give you a couple of Allen wrenches, and really that's all you need. Goes together very simply. So now let's talk about adjusting the belt tension. So to start off with, I unplugged the unit. I also took out the power switch key, the safety key. When I open up the guard here, you can see that the belt is on the top pulley on both sides, the front and the rear. And that sets the unit up for 3100 RPM. Well, let's just say we want to slow it down to, say, 1700 RPM. So we need to move the belt. So we loosen, there's one thumb screw on this side of the unit. You loosen this, and this allows the motor to swing. There's actually a hinge on the other side. So if I swing it toward the front to sort of loosen the belt, now I can take the belt off. And with the belt off, you can see that the motor is able to swing quite a bit. So what holds the motor in the right position is this plunger. And there's a spring on the plunger that forces the plunger always against this mounting plate for the motor. Once the motor is swung into the right position, you retighten the thumb screw, and now the motor doesn't move. So what we want to do is set it up for 1700 RPM, which is the middle pulley on both the front and the rear. So if I put the belt in the back for the third pulley down, which is the middle pulley, I make sure that the belt is on this side of the spring clip for the guard. You don't want it on this side, of course, right? You want it on that side. And then what we need to do is get it on the third pulley down in the front. So with a little bit of practice, it goes pretty quickly. So now I've got my belt on. You can see it's very loose. If I swing the motor to the rear, you can see how the belt tightens. Hopefully you can see that on the camera. Swing it to tighten the belt, tighten the thumb screw, check your belt tension. Of course, make sure the belt is on the right side of the spring clip. Lower the guard, reinsert your safety key, plug the unit back in, and you're ready to go. So now let's look at adjusting the height of the table. So the clamp handle is right on this side. You just loosen this up, turn the handle, and make the table go up and down. It works very smoothly. I don't feel any binds. get it to where you want it, tighten the handle. You can make this very tight, and once it's tight, the table just doesn't move. It's a little hard to tell because I'm on such a wobbly table, but the table is just not moving. Now let's talk about adjusting the angle of the table. I'm going to use a 3/4 inch wrench, but you could also use a socket. There's a bolt right underneath the table. You just want to loosen this bolt. Once the bolt is loose, the table actually swings all the way around. There's a shot of the bolts. There is a scale and a little mark on the table to help you set the angle. So once you get the table set into the right position, use your wrench or your socket, tighten that bolt back up. And once it's tight, the table is just not moving. It's very secure. So to more accurately set the angle on the table, you might want to try and do something like this. I start by removing the safety key from the power switch, so I can't turn the unit on by accident. I've got something just under 1/4 inch drill bit chalked up, but any sort of drill bit will do, something that's fairly long. Then some sort of a square. This is just a part of a combination square. And I have a paper towel here in the background, so hopefully the camera can see that the drill bit is not perpendicular to the table right now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and loosen the bolt underneath the table so I can swivel the table and then move the square until such time as it looks like the table and the drill bit are at 90 degrees to each other. So that actually looks pretty good. So now I have to tighten the bolt under the table, and as soon as I do that, the table moves a little bit. So this is a little bit of a exercise in patience, but not too bad. And once I get that bolt tight, my drill press is not clamped down to the table I'm working on, so it can wobble around by itself. So with that bolt tight, the table is not going to move. And I hope you can see that the drill bit is now a lot closer to being perpendicular to the table. So this drill press comes with a laser crosshair. Here's the on-off switch for it. The laser is actually powered by 2 AAA batteries that come in the box with the drill press. Hopefully you can see the laser light, and you can see the unit does not have to be plugged in order for the laser to work. There are a couple of adjustments right underneath here in case you need to adjust how the laser lines cross. So there is a work light that's built into the drill press. Here's the on-off switch for it. In order for this light to work, the unit has to be plugged in. It's not battery powered like the laser light. The bulb for this is actually made up of many LEDs. Hopefully you can see those on the camera. So this is LED light. It's not incandescent, so there's no filament to burn out. On this side of the drill press, there's a chuck key holder. Makes for a very handy storage place for the chuck key when you're not using it. So on my drill press, I noticed that the power cable exits the guard right here. This is the power cable. And I just think it's a little silly to have this wire hanging down right like that. So what I found was, well, there was a couple of choices. I could just take the wire and loop it over and use the piece of wire that came in the box to wrap up the power cord for shipping. I could do that. Or I could pull this motor cable away, tuck the power cord back here, put the motor cord back where I found it, and then use the piece of wire and wrap it around the two cables just to loosely secure them together, like so. Right, and now the cable hangs behind the unit, which I think is a little nicer. And I hope you can see on the camera that the cables are above the hinge, which is what the motor pivots on. And if I pivot the motor, I hope you can see that the cables aren't anywhere near the hinge, so I don't see how there's a way where those two cables can get pinched. So I think this is a little nicer. The guard that goes over the pulleys is made from sheet metal, and it happens to be magnetic. In the box, WEN provides a couple of Allen wrenches that you use to assemble the unit. So to store those Allen wrenches, you could take a magnet and hold on to the Allen wrenches like that. Now if you do that, and then open up the lid, there is no interference or anything like that. So you could stick the magnet there. You could also stick it here. You could stick it right on top if you like, maybe over in the back. This large Allen wrench is used to tighten the two set screws that hold the main head of the unit onto this post. The large Allen wrench is also used to tighten the set screw that holds the crank handle on. The small Allen wrench is used to adjust the laser. There's an adjustment screw on this side, and then there's one right on the opposite side. If you decide you prefer to remove the table, then what you need to do is loosen these two set screws using the large Allen wrench, and that'll allow you to lift the head off of this column. And then if you loosen this set screw on this collar using the small Allen wrench, then you're able to lift the table right up and off the column. Put the head back on, tighten the two set screws. Now you can use the drill press without the table. So something to keep in mind when using the laser, it is battery powered. And I happen to have brand new batteries installed, so the laser light is fairly bright. And when I turn the work light on, I can still see the laser light even though the work light is on. But I'm wondering, as the batteries get a little weaker, if the work light will overpower the laser light and it'll be difficult to see. We'll just have to discover that as we go along here. The other thing to keep in mind is once you're done using the laser, make sure to turn it off so you don't drain your batteries. If you do need to change the batteries, then you just press on this little clip and pivot the switch up like that, and then pull it down slightly, and that exposes the batteries. To reinstall the switch, just make sure these two little terminals go in the gap between the two batteries, and these two tabs go underneath the lip. And then push it in, clicks in place. So now let's talk a little bit more about using the table. If I loosen the column clamp, I actually am able to swing the whole table out of the way. That allows me to put something else here when working on a larger piece. If you decide you need to clamp your workpiece to the table, you have lots of different choices. You could use a drill press vise similar to this. This one might be a little large for this table, but it might work. And of course, you can orient it in any direction, whatever suits your needs. You can choose to use an F-style clamp if you want to clamp the vise to the table, or you could actually use some bolts through the slots here. It's totally up to you. Or you could just set the vise down on the table and hold it by hand as you're drilling your holes. So this is one style of drill press vise. They're available locally at home improvement stores. You can certainly get them online. I think I got this one from Harbor Freight. There's other kinds of drill press vices as well. Here's another one. This one is, you can see, taller, but the advantage of this one is when you loosen this bolt, and there's one on each side, when you loosen these bolts, you're able to angle the jaws so that if you needed to angle your workpiece before you drilled your holes, you could maybe consider using a vise like this. Because this vise is so large, this might be a vise you'd want to use after you swing the table all the way out of the way and maybe set the vise down here on the base. That'd totally be up to you. You could also just use a standard F-style clamp. So if we've got our board here, and F-style clamp, position the board, tighten the clamp, and now the board is held to the table very securely. You could also choose to use a clamp like this, where it's sort of a vice grip type clamp with a threaded section. So if I take the nut and the flat washer off, this happens to be 3/8 in diameter, so this is a 3/8 by 16 thread nut. If I take that and insert it in, let's say, this slot, and take the flat washer and the nut and thread it onto the threaded section of the clamp, just doing it by hand, I'm not going to get out any wrenches or sockets. Okay, so when it's on there, I can slide it around, I can rotate it. So let's say I want to position my board, something like that. I might want to just snug up the nut totally by hand, close the clamp, and now the board is held very securely on the table. So when it comes to clamping your workpieces onto the drill press table, you have lots of different choices. These are just a few of what I have available, and I'm sure there's lots and lots of other choices as well. So here's one more clamping example. Let's say that we wanted to drill a hole in this 2x10 right there. And you'll notice that even if I lower the table all the way down, I'm not able to get the board under the drill bit. So what could we do? Well, how about if we did this? Take our 3/4 inch wrench, loosen this bolt that controls the angle of the table, and rotate the table around to about 90 degrees. I'm just going to snug this bolt up a little bit, just so it doesn't flop around on us. I can still move it by hand. It's just not going to move on its own. Then we'll take our board. There's the mark right here. I'm going to set it on the base of our drill press, like so. We're going to take a clamp, and we're going to clamp it on the end of our board. So by pressing the edge of the board flush against the base of the drill press, and then tightening up this clamp, now this clamp holds this end of the board up so it won't drop. Take another clamp, and we'll clamp the board to the table. We're going to tighten this clamp up because we want the surface of the board to be flush up against the drill press table. In fact, I'm going to loosen the bolt a little bit just to make sure that the table is free to rotate. Okay, with this clamp nice and tight, now I can tighten the bolt, controlling table angle. Okay. Now I can loosen this clamp again, turn my laser on, and I can adjust the position of my board. I can rotate, I can move the board in and out. So what I want to do is line up the laser crosshairs with the mark that I made on the board where I want to drill my hole. Tighten up my clamp. That looks pretty close. Now I can tighten the column clamp. And with our 1, 2, 3 clamps tight, now I'm ready to drill my hole. So I was just trying to show you that you can get kind of creative with how you use the drill press. Just whatever you do, make sure you work smart, work safe, don't hurt yourself. Now let's take a look at how accurate the laser is. So I've got a block of wood clamped to the tabletop. Everything's tightened down. So let me zoom in. And then if I lower the spindle, it looks like it meets right at the cross of the laser. Let me turn on and just make a tiny little divot in the wood. So hopefully you can see that the hole is right where the laser lines cross. Let me move the camera and we'll see if we can show you a slightly better view. So here's the little hole I just drilled in the 2x4, and I hope you can see it's right where the laser lines cross. So this is an 1.1 hole saw, and the drill press is set up for 1700 RPM, and we're drilling through a 2x4. So now let's try using the depth adjustment guide. That's this ring or collar with the locking knob right here. And you can see that it's loose. So to set it, I'm just going to lower my spindle to the lowest point that I want to drill to. So let's say it's right there. Then I'm going to take the collar and I'm going to rotate it counterclockwise this way until it hits a stop. Hopefully you can hear that, hitting a stop. Once it hits the stop, I'm going to tighten the knob and it should be all set. To check it, I'm just going to raise the spindle back up and then drop it back down and make sure that it stops right where I need it to. Let me show you without the board there. So with the depth adjustment set, I don't have to worry about drilling through my table. So now I'm going to change the speed so that I can drill a hole with a much smaller drill bit. So I'm going to take out the safety key, loosen my thumb screw, swivel the motor back toward the front, and I want to set it for the fastest speed, which is 3,100 RPM. So the belt needs to go to the top pulleys on each side. So that's where the belt needs to go. I'm just going to swivel the motor out, tighten the thumb screw, verify that I've got decent belt tension. It feels pretty good. Lower the guard, put the key back in. Now I just need to install my bit and then drill the hole. So I'm going to install the bit. Just going to use something a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch. Tighten that up. I'm going to store my chuck key so I don't lose it. Put the safety key back in. Now let's set the depth. So I'm going to drill down to about there. Rotate the depth adjustment guide counterclockwise till I hit the stop, then tighten that knob. Now that's as far as the drill bit will go. Stick my piece of wood up here, take a clamp, okay, all set. Now let's try something a little bit more challenging. This is a 3-inch hole saw, and I'm going through, I think this is a piece of oak. I've got the drill press set to the slowest speed, which is 600 RPM. There's the disc. And there's the hole. Well, that'll do it for this video. I gotta say, I really like this WEN drill press, 10-inch, 5-speed with laser crosshair. There's a whole bunch of things that I really like. I like, for example, that it has a cast iron base and tabletop. The extra weight it adds to the machine just makes it feel that much more robust. I like the laser crosshair, lets me know where the drill bit is going to contact my part. I also like the integrated work light because sometimes having a little bit extra light on my workpiece is really a good thing. And I especially like the fact that the motor pivots on a hinge when adjusting belt tension. So it makes changing speeds both easy and quick. So there's a bunch of things that I really like about this drill press, and I'm sure I'm going to enjoy using it for years to come. Now, if you have any questions or comments, let me know. And especially, thank you very much for watching Imagine, Then Make.